In this video, we're going to talk about the best places to look to find top quality virtual assistants. This is Chapter 1, Lesson 2 of our Employee Hiring System Made Easy Virtual Assistants Edition, where you can truly work less to profit more. And of course, there's going to be action items at the end because all of this education is simply entertainment if you do nothing with it. And if you're looking to hire, congratulations to you, because that's the one decision that you can make to see your business skyrocket. I want to begin with a quote by Elon Musk. Most people will know who this guy is, and this is when it comes to hiring. He said his biggest mistake is weighing too much on someone's talent, that is the education and the resume, rather than someone's personality. The goal for me is to hire somebody that fits with the organization personally so that they will stick with us long term. People like to work with people that they enjoy being around and interacting with. And when they enjoy the work environment they're in, they'll enjoy the work itself more and be more motivated to work heartily. So consider this: where finding virtual assistants. There are endless choices, and some of them are extremely popular. We'll go through a couple of them, and then I'll share some of the places that I prefer to find virtual assistants so that at the end of this training, you'll be confident taking these actions to determine the best place to find great talent based off of your current situation or your future hiring needs. And that's whether it's short-term project gigs or long-term full-time or part-time work just to get started. Now, the first thing you want to do is determine the following. So answer these questions. What is your budget? As a rule of thumb, the budget for some of the key positions we'd recommend you hire is an executive assistant, a cold caller, a text message marketer, and a lead manager. And there's also an off-market acquisition specialist. These are a lot of the roles that we cover in all of our trainings. Now, just know that the executive assistant can be you to start out, but if you're ready to take that dive, expect to pay, depending on the next point here, whether it's US based or not, anywhere from $5 an hour to $30 an hour. For a phone sales rep, that is the cold caller colloquially, $4 an hour to $25 an hour. And for an SMS sales rep or a text message marketer, we call them ISAs. These terms are all interchangeable. You can expect to pay anywhere from $3 an hour to $15 an hour. And a lead manager role, if you're looking stateside, you're going to spend at least $25 an hour for a lead manager. But you can also get it anywhere from $5 all the way to about $25 to start. And this really just ties in, as I said, to the next one. Where are they? Are they US based or are they elsewhere? And you have to determine, is US based important to you? And then ultimately decide what's most important to you. Now, we've hired from all over, and we concluded that both are good in some circumstances. And a bit of that we'll share. Just keep in mind that when it comes to US based versus elsewhere, we have a couple of things to consider. Now, I've included here a Filipino flag on the right-hand side as well as the flag of India, and these are just two of the many places that we have hired from and currently have employees. We'll start with the left-hand side here. When it comes to hiring stateside, speaking from the US, but this can also be not just America, right? Whether you're an employer in Canada, the UK, Australia, and other areas, when you are hiring, for example, from the US-based employees, your customers, some of them will be attracted to that. They'll say, hey, we hire Americans only, and this is an appeal. Now, sometimes that's not really a big deal, and it doesn't really matter. So you have to make that determination for you and your business. And we're going to share some places, of course, next where we would recommend you hire if you're looking to hire stateside. And that is versus, on the right-hand side here, the average hourly rate is $3 to $15 an hour versus on the left here, if it's stateside, it's $20 to $35 an hour. And it can range depending on the role, but these roles I covered in this last slide here, those are the roles we're talking about. We're talking about those 4 key positions, and the 5th one that wasn't listed that I didn't mention, and I'm not going to talk a whole lot about right now, for off-market lead generation. So we have both as a real estate investors on and off-market lead gen, and these are just the really common positions to fill. Understand that you could get possible stellar candidates no matter where you hire from, including the US, but definitely overseas. Our team, many of them are overseas. We have US based employees as well. But a lot of them, out of the 50 or so employees that we have, are virtual assistants. And what I should qualify that is to say that all of us are virtual. Even as business partners, my partner is in a different area than I am of the country. So we're all over the map, and virtual is not exclusive to overseas, just to be clear. Now, you may find, as I have found, some of these things to be true, but I put quotations around this next bullet point. Often easier to communicate. That is if it's stateside. I put those air quotes around there because the truth is that that's not always the case, but objectively speaking, they're speaking English. They probably were really raised speaking English, but it's a very common language all over the world anyway. So that's why I say it's often harder to communicate, and it really kind of leads into the last point here where it says likely more cultural similarities versus possible cultural unknowns. Now, it's obvious the time zone is a potential challenge depending on who you're looking to hire and for what role. Now, just know you can overcome those challenges. We have most of our staff working on US-based time zones, no matter where they are, whether they're in India, which we do have some, or whether it's the Philippines, or whether it is in Jamaica, or even we have some in Canada. And that's not too hard because we're really in the same hemisphere. But at the end of the day, the most important consideration here are the cultural similarities and the cultural unknowns. If you're hiring, no matter from where you're hiring, you want to make sure that you understand some of the holidays, for example, that they celebrate that we might not as Americans here, or whether you're in the UK or Australia or otherwise, because I personally never want to have any of my employees work over a holiday that they're celebrating and that is cultural to them. So these are some key considerations to keep in mind when it comes to our top choices of where to look. If we're going with the US, we're going to find two places for us to hire. That's Time, etc., and that's US only, as well as Upwork and Fiverr, because we'll find people from all over the world on Upwork and Fiverr, but a lot of times, like the person that we hired from Canada, we actually found them on Fiverr, and I've hired a lot of people from Upwork. I don't have a lot of staff from Upwork right now. I'll get into the reasons why as we compare the two of them together here in just a minute. But just know that these are our top places. And when it comes to elsewhere, that is not the US based, we really look and leverage for candidates on OnlineJobs.ph. And by the way, all of the links to these sites we have to support the channel if you wish to use them are linked in the description below. And we'd really appreciate it if you decided you wanted to go with any of our recommendations. You can click the link in the description and support the channel that way, and we'd say thank you. Speaking of which, as a thank you, I wanted to share this resource with you too. It is a free business growth resource. As you can see, the 5 must-implement real estate investing tools for business scale. Some of this stuff about the VA hiring system, we'll cover an overview of it, things to consider as a real estate investor in particular. And if you're not in the real estate investing industry, stick with us in this course because there's a lot of value you're still going to glean. Remember, this is Chapter 1, Lesson 2, and we're going to continue right now to share with you Fiverr versus Upwork and just some pros and cons between the two of them and things to consider and keep in mind and why and when we would hire from one versus the other. So on Fiverr here, you can see that the average dollar per hour is set by the employee. So that's the person that is posting their gig, and sometimes it turns into long-term work like it has for us, for that gentleman I mentioned we hired who lives in Canada. Versus in Upwork, it's usually a little bit more negotiable, but that's not to say that it's cheaper, and we'll get into that. Now, depending on the scope of work over here on the left-hand side, costs can be higher on Fiverr, and that is because they're the small gig base. It's supposed to be $5 an hour, but you can always have those add-ons for these kind of one-off things. It can turn into a more robust scope of work. Versus Upwork, where the costs are a bit lower. And by the way, when I say the costs, right now I'm referring to your cost, right? I'm referring to what you're paying. As an employee, when you're posting these jobs, you want to consider what their experience is too, and we're going to get into that in just a minute as well. Now, the Fiverr situation, when you need things done really quickly, this is a great option, and this is what we choose very regularly for these one-off things that we really need to get done. Like I said, faster from need to done. And then, of course, with Upwork, it's slower from need to done because you want to take them, and you usually do, through a resume search, and then you're vetting them a little bit more, and then you're on an interview with them one-on-one, and then eventually you get to the point where you hire them and you start the project. So it can take a lot longer to get them hired, which is another reason why using Upwork, it takes a little bit longer. Now, this is kind of a little bit in alignment with that from need to done. It's more suited for freelance gigs. But again, I did mention that we do have an employee in Canada who we found off Fiverr, and now that works for us. And it's a great fit. And we did not find them on Upwork. In fact, they didn't even have an Upwork profile. So that's why I would recommend kind of checking both of these out. And when it comes to Upwork, that again is more suited for part-time or full-time. But gigs are okay if you want to just have like a one-off project. Now, here's the deal. I mentioned I would talk about for the freelancer, right? On Fiverr, there's a higher percentage of fees that are paid by the freelancer. And I believe that's 20%. So that's the actual cut that Fiverr gets. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that, but it doesn't change no matter how many gigs you do. Where on the other hand, with Upwork, the tiers, the percentage that's paid by the freelancer or the person who has that, profile that you're hiring, it's a tiered basis. And frankly, it's still really expensive. And that's why the costs are a little bit higher to do business hiring people from Fiverr and from Upwork, because the person who you're employing to do the work isn't actually getting a big chunk of that money, up to 20%. I believe it's like $10,000 on a gig or a project and Upwork, and then they go to the next tier where they pay a smaller percentage, which is actually a lot. And I'm sure you would agree with that. So that's one of the reasons why actually there's the preference for us, like I said, is OnlineJobs.ph, because we want to be able to take that money and instead of putting it into this third party, give it directly to the person that we're hiring, which also cuts our costs too, so that we don't have to spend as much money for this employee or to provide to this objective of getting something done, and also give more money to the employee themselves, since it's not going to the third party. So both of these, right? We see this quality versus speed. It completely varies. But I think that the big takeaway from Fiverr versus Upwork is, if you're looking for speed and you really need to get something done quickly, go to Fiverr.com and then get your gig done there. But if you're looking for a bit of a more long-term solution, or even if it's just a part-time, or if it's a 3-month situation that it's going to take to get something done that you're looking to hire them for to benefit your business, you would definitely do well to go to Upwork.com to make that happen. So now OnlineJobs.ph versus Upwork, and this is 9 times out of 10 we're choosing OnlineJobs.ph. So just to compare these two a little bit, we already went through Upwork. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I will say that for OnlineJobs.ph, the average range per hour is about $3 to $10. And of course, it varies from position to position. But one thing that I love is what I mentioned before. All of the dollar per hour goes directly to the VA. There is no middleman. There's a one-time subscription that you can cancel after you make your hire, and then when you're ready to hire again, you can redo it. In fact, John Jonas, the founder of OnlineJobs.ph, he says that in videos. He says, hey, just pay for a month's subscription, and when you're done hiring, cancel it, and then when you want to rehire, just pay for it again. And this is a great way to do it, and this is the way that we would recommend you do it. There's also another way that we're going to get into about how to scale a team without even having to go back to the drawing board and do this. And that is in another lesson, but you're going to want to stick with this course for that. OnlineJobs.ph, it's suited for building long-term relationships, really solid relationships. We really care about our employees that work with us. They're more like family than anything else. We care about their personal lives, and that's part of this hiring system. It's just in a way to hire people that just are really committed to not just the company, but because they have a lot more of a vision that you're sharing, because you're hiring people with similar visions and that fit the company culture that you wanted to create. So all that said, I find that as far as elsewhere in the United States, I find that just per capita, people who I'm hiring in the Philippines, their English it's way more common, so it's more likely to be interfacing with somebody who has really great speaking skills in English. So if we need that, and also Spanish, by the way, but if we need that, we're going to go to the Philippines, and we can almost bet that we're going to find some top quality candidates who can speak really well, like for phone roles, right? Or when you're talking to clients or customers. for phone sales. And culturally, they're really hardworking. And that is something that really resonates with me as an entrepreneur. And I'm sure with you as an entrepreneur, you know you're on the grind all the time. And frankly, I just messaged earlier one of my employees in the Philippines. It's about 6 p.m. right now, and he usually gets off at 3 p.m. I sent him something to the attention of tomorrow, but he responded and he said, "Hey, I got this. Thanks so much." So that's just to say that he's still plugged in. If I needed him, I know that I could rely on him, and I really appreciate that about him. Now, Upwork, as I said, I'm not going to go through all this, but I will say hard work kind of varies. I'm going from the bottom to the top here. And English speaking varies, and it can be okay for long-term gigs. I've had a copywriter before ChatGPT existed that I hired from Upwork for a very long time from Nigeria, and I had him in my employ for about 2.5 years when I was doing real estate investing. Well, we're still doing real estate investing, but when I was doing it solo before I linked up with my business partner, Chris and Brad. So the thing that, of course, is I don't really want to make a habit of hiring off of Upwork is that not all of that money goes to the employee who you're hiring, and the average dollar per hour fee is usually higher. So again, 9 times out of 10, OnlineJobs.ph. I gave all these reasons, but truly, there are many more reasons why. But I want to tell you that as far as the system that we have here, the system that we've created to hire people and expedite this process, this is what it looks like. We're going to focus on the 4 key positions. And that's right here. The 4 key positions are the executive assistant, the phone sales rep, the SMS sales rep, and the lead manager. And we also have a special bonus where we'll talk about a acquisition specialist that is going to be at the end of this course, so be sure to stay tuned. This is just a snapshot of who we'd recommend to hire in any sales-based business, especially when it comes to real estate investing, in addition to what we're going to be sharing with you about how you can create this with this entire system. And that is the job descriptions and posts, the offer and disposition letters, email vetting sequences, which are huge, and a 2-stage interview outlines for both the first and second interview, and scheduling question sets so that when they schedule that interview, you're going to be even more prepared. They're going to be even more vetted to make sure that you end up ultimately with the top quality candidate in front of you interviewing them, and you only have to interview them once. And we're going to talk all about that. If you don't know these action items yet, just write these down. You got to create an account on OnlineJobs.ph, or if you want, Upwork or Fiverr. And I would recommend creating accounts for all of these, but certainly if you're only going to choose one, choose OnlineJobs.ph. And then for US based, if you're decided that that's what you want to do, then use time, etc. All these links, again, will be in the description. And if you use those links, you'll be supporting the channel. So thank you for that. The one that works best is the one you actually want to use. So if you take my recommendation or not, just take action regardless. So there are your simple action items. And the next component to this system to train on is absolutely critical. In fact, we've named it Critical Considerations for Hiring VAs. And you can find that next lesson right here where we're going to make it easy.